And I'll hand over to you, Peter. Thanks for joining us.
Beautiful. Thanks, Gary. And thanks to Peter Tressiter as well for that excellent super update. I always have to admit, I find it a little bit confusing to get my head around. So it's always nice to hear what's actually going on from the experts. Okay, so as Gary mentioned, we are talking today about our Australian Digital Skills Analysis. And I'd like to just begin by adding my acknowledgement to that of Gary. So I am joining from the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation this morning. And I'd like to pay my respects to the future and past, present and future traditional custodians and elders of this nation, and to the continuation of cultural, spiritual and educational practices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. So during today's session, I'm going to have two parts. The first element, I'm just going to give a brief overview of what ATTIS is up to at the moment. I'm not going to go into any detail, but I will have some information here about how you can contact us if you'd just like to hear a little bit more about what we're doing. And then once I've gone through all of that very quickly, I'll go into the digital skills analysis. And I've got 6 sections here that I'm going to be talking about today. Now, for those of you who have been following our blog recently, we have been putting out a range of blog posts on these topics, so you will be familiar with some of the content. And later today, we will have a preview access to our final blog post in the series for anyone that's joined. So I will include that link as well, and that will go up later today. So you all have early preview. It will go live to the general public on Thursday. So starting off with our overview of ATTIS. And we've got a lovely team photo. We have added a few more people. In fact, 2 of my colleagues are in this session today, and neither of them are in this particular photo, so we will have to get it updated. So I'm sure many of you are very familiar with ATTIS, the Australian Apprenticeships and Traineeships Information Service. But what a lot of people don't realise is ATTIS is a federally funded contract. So it is funded through the Department of Education, Skills and Employment. Now, the company behind ATTIS is Integrated Information Service. So that's the company that basically pays our wages and does run ATTIS. But as well as running ATTIS, we do consultancy work, particularly around the research and data analysis areas and around marketing, so social media and digital marketing as well. So we do have a range of other projects going on in the background that people don't really hear about quite as much. And as Gary said, we have been working with GAN Australia and AEN on the digital skills area, and that has been as part of our work with Integrated Information Service. And of course, ATTIS is very happy to be able to use the outcomes of that piece of research to inform our own work as the information service. So during last year's mid-year conference or online webinars that were run by AEN, I gave a brief update about what ATTIS was doing at the time and what we had coming up. So I just wanted to touch very briefly on some of the projects that I mentioned at that point. So there are a few projects that we have completed, including our update of the Career Interest Explorer. So for those of you who use the AA Pathways website regularly, you will be familiar with the Career Interest Explorer, and you will have noticed recently that there are a range of updates on that particular resource. If you're looking for more information, we do have a blog post that outlines the background and rationale and how we've gone about making that change. We've also released our apprenticeship snapshots, which are PDF flyers, so double page flyers that you can print out, customise them with your organisation's call to action and logo, and they give an overview of key Australian apprenticeships information for different target groups. So for example, for students, parents, career advisors, job seekers, employers, and so on. And we also have now a classroom poster that goes along with those snapshots as well. Our ATTIS resource videos, we have been releasing some short videos giving an overview of our resources and how to use them, and they're all up on our MyGain YouTube channel. And of course, last year we ran a range of virtual information sessions, and we were very excited this year to be able to go back out and do in-person information sessions. We actually had a range of them booked across Melbourne and Geelong over the next couple of weeks. And of course, you know, COVID doesn't always let us go ahead with our plans. So we will be back out and about as soon as it's, you know, practical and reasonable under the health conditions. So a range of ongoing and upcoming research, projects that we've got on includes our parents research project that some of you will be familiar with. So we are still collecting some final data from parents around their understanding of the future of work. And once that's finished off, we will be publishing a report on that particular topic. We're currently working on an induction kit, which will release, we're aiming for August for the release of that particular one, and that will be really useful for the GTOs and also our ASINs as well. When you're taking on new staff, we'll have a range of information and accompanying videos to go along with that one around Australian apprenticeships and giving a background to the industry. We're starting a data project at the moment, which the tentative title probably won't stick throughout the whole project, is our A to Z of Australian apprenticeships data and looking at a range of data and what it can tell us about the sector. We've got some content videos that are going on at the moment. We're doing some updates to our job and training descriptions, including some new search highlights on there. And we're also working on an apprenticeship readiness quiz. So a lot of work that we have ongoing at the moment. Now, last year we did have a focus on employers as well, and this of course is ongoing, particularly with things like boosting apprenticeship commencements, really increasing the number of new employers or those who haven't had an apprentice or trainee for a significant amount of time, assisting those employers understanding really what's involved in an Australian apprenticeship. And that included late last year the launch of our Employing an Apprentice quiz. Recently we've launched our Steps to Employing an Australian Apprentice as a section on the website, and we have a range of other information there as well. And one of the really big projects that we have launched in the last 6 months is our ATTIS Partners program. So I will give you some links, some information about how to find more about our partners program. But essentially the idea of this program is to enhance and streamline our collaboration with our key partners across the sector. So particularly those GTOs, ASINs, government organisations, career advisors, and really and employment services. So those organisations working across the Australian apprenticeships or related sectors. And we're trying to foster a network of highly engaged organisations as part of the Partners program, you would get access to some pre-release access to new resources and media releases and exclusive access to partner events. So I'll show you where you can find more information about that one in a moment. And one final very quick update is the very exciting launch of one of Integrated Information Services' new projects, which is Peak Green. So Peak Green is a new initiative launching on the 1st of July, so you are the first to hear about it, which will profile environmental sustainability best practices in Australia and globally and give practical sustainability tips and actions for small and medium businesses. So really focusing in that SME space. And there will be opportunities to co-create content and showcase sustainability stories and ideas. So environmental sustainability is something that we are very excited about at Integrated Information Services and at ATTIS as well. It is one of our key values. And so this new initiative is something that we're all very passionate about and really looking forward to getting Peak Green launched. So if you want to hear more about that, you can go to peakgreen.com.au. The website is not live yet, but you will be able to sign up for the newsletter there if you are also interested in environmental sustainability. So to join the Partners program or hear more about what ATTIS is doing, you can go to the Australian Apprenticeships Pathways website, so apathways.com.au. For Partners program, that is /ATTIS-partners. Or for subscribing to any of our newsletters or contacting us, it is /contact. And you can also email us or call us. So contact@attis.com.au or partners@attis.com.au for that particular program. And you can call us on 1800 338 022 as well. So the main part of our session today, Australian Digital Skills Analysis. So this has been a really exciting project that we have been running with GAN Australia, and I think it's a little bit over 6 months now. We first started talking about this just before Christmas, Gary. So it's been a really excellent project and we're very excited to have been involved. Now, the report, Digital Skilling Situational Analysis in Australia, was prepared by myself and Dr. Mark Dean, with both of us from Integrated Information Service, and we had a lot of support from GAN Australia, so particularly from Gary and Nick, and also from the GAN Australia Steering Committee. Funding was provided by Microsoft Corporation, but of course, the material in the report, blog posts, and in these sessions does not necessarily reflect the Microsoft's views or policies, and mentions of initiatives or organisations doesn't imply endorsement by Microsoft either. So just the usual caveat about this particular report. So as I said, I will be going through these 6 different elements today, but we also do, as part of today's session, have a Slido that is up and running. So of course you can ask any questions through the Teams chat if you'd like to, but you can also ask questions through Slido, and we will have a number of polls as we go through the session today. So when we get to each poll, you will again have the QR code and the code. If you go to slido.com, you will be able to enter this particular session and answer those polls as we go through today. And as I said, yeah, you can join each poll individually as we go through, or you can jump in now. So digital skills. The first part of this report was really around defining digital skills. What are we talking about when we are referring to digital skills? So an Australian definition of digital skills is outlined in Kakar and colleagues' working paper. The authors define digital skills as a combination of a digital mindset, knowledge, competence, and attitude. And you can see up on the screen here that they've got a few examples of what each of those different elements entails. So this means that possessing digital skills is much more than just having an ability to use digital technologies. Digital skills result from this ability combined with the understanding of how they can create change and add value. And that's really important as we go into workplaces or education environments. This understandability, coupled with concrete technical capabilities to put digital knowledge into action, results in this level of digital competence. This is what allows an individual to utilise their digital technologies in a range of different contexts and with a level of critical application that grows with experience. So again, considering that this is a kind of lifelong learning area around digital skills and capacity. Now, we all know that digital skills are important, but we've got a few different highlights here really to explain how important they are. So the industry reference committees responsible for Australia's vet sector, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, rank digital skills as the 4th most valuable generic skill across all industries. So this is regardless of which IRC it was. Ultimately, all of them ranked digital skills, so technology use and their application skills, as the 4th most important skill across all of those different industries. And they were identified as a top priority skill in over half of those industries. So those generic digital skills are really important across the board, but also a really key priority in over half of all industries. So as I said, this is split between our generic digital skills in industries such as transport and logistics or correctional services, compared to those technical industry specific skills that you would need in areas such as use of custom software in business environments or custom hardware in areas such as electricity supply. So funded by the Australian Government, the Digital Transformation Expert Panel and the Digital Skills Organisation, which we'll touch on a little bit later today as well, will assist in making sure that the Australian vet sector and digital skills landscape are focused on future skills in the digital space and making sure that as workplaces become radically transformed by increased automation and digitisation, that they do have the skills for them to be able to thrive in the future. So really important, as I said, that we do all have digital skills. So 75% of the fastest growing occupations in Australia are in STEM areas, and these are areas that require really high level technical digital skills. But while most people think of STEM as university pathways, over 25% of STEM employees have vocational qualifications. So a large portion of that workforce does actually come from the vet sector. And when we consider that this is talking about the highest level qualification, it's actually quite likely that more than 25% do have vet qualifications, that we've got 25% with their highest qualification level as a vet qual. And of course, a lot of these will be trained through the Australian apprenticeship sector as well. National Skills Commission research found that STEM jobs were the most resilient to the effects of COVID-19. So even during the height of COVID, employment in STEM occupations only fell 1.9%, so less than 2%, compared with more than 7% for all other roles. So that is really quite a large difference in that resilience of STEM roles. Moving on now to our second area of the report, which is the digital divide and social inclusion. So now that we know that digital skills are really vital across all industries and occupations, one of the key issues that we do have in Australia's digital skills landscape is what we refer to as the digital divide. So the divide between people who have digital skills and those who do not. Now, during COVID-19, unfortunately, Australia's social inclusion in the digital landscape stalled. So we were going relatively well until COVID hit, and then things really heated off. Now, all of us here today will be very familiar with working and learning from home. So it's something that we've really been having to do since COVID-19 started. And of course, COVID really was a huge change factor in moving in digital transformation and people moving to remote working and learning. However, many Australians still don't have access to digital technologies, and they don't have the basic digital skills to be able to participate in the digital landscape. So for when Australia is moving to this really high-tech digital remote workforce, there are a lot of people being left behind simply because they don't have access. Now, government responses such as the new employment services model, which is an upcoming new model that the federal government is pushing through at the moment, will be providing predominantly online services. Now, I do want to acknowledge, of course, that the federal government has recognised this issue and will be providing training to be able to engage with that online portal, and we'll still be providing face-to-face services as well. But of course, as we've seen, and as was always going to happen regardless of COVID, government services and a range of other services really are moving into a digital landscape, which does mean that anyone who doesn't have basic access is going to be left behind. Now, there are a number of groups who are really affected by the digital divide and social inclusion issues. So some of the key groups that we'll be talking about are those who are really facing other forms of disadvantage. So people who live with disabilities, are in regional and remote areas, from low socioeconomic backgrounds, older Australians and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are all key groups who are facing digital exclusion. And a lot of that is due to the reasons behind the digital divide. Now, as well as this, we do see some other groups facing digital exclusion who we don't usually talk about in these kind of disadvantaged areas. So that does include particularly older men who are in the workforce at the moment, who may not be working in digital environments, but who may be displaced by automation. And certainly we've seen that over the past decades with the demise of the car manufacturing industry in Australia. But as the workplaces are shifting and becoming more digital, we do certainly see a lot of these groups of people who don't have those digital skills being really affected by changes in their job roles. Okay, so we have our first poll. So if everyone can jump into Slido and hopefully we'll see some results popping up on the screen here, but we'll see how we go. I'm going to assume that if I don't see any results popping up, that no one can enter Slido and that we'll have to send these around later today. But those key factors, so these are some of the key factors that are causing issues with digital inclusion. So I want to see what people think are the greatest problems for digital inclusion across the sector. And as you are voting, I'm going to talk a little bit about this particular issue. So the cost of digital technology is one of the really key issues. So the cost of digital devices, so things like computers and smartphones, and then the cost of digital access, so internet access and phone plans. Excellent, we've got one person that's jumped in already. And these are brilliant. The cost of digital connection is really something that is prohibited, particularly to young people, people who don't have a high income, and particularly those who are unemployed. And some responses to COVID certainly did help people with these particular issues, particularly the increased job seeker funding. But of course, that's not necessarily available for everyone. Now, there are some free or low cost alternatives when it comes to the cost of digital devices. But again, this isn't necessarily available to everyone. So particularly those who are living in regional and remote areas, for example, may not have ready access to a public library where they can go and use a computer that's connected to the internet. And there are people who, you know, particularly when you're job hunting and doing a lot of online applications, really will need quite a lot of ongoing connectivity as well. So this free and low cost alternatives can be quite a problem for people. Now, Australia's digital infrastructure is another issue that we have. So reliable internet and phone coverage. Again, this really does affect regional and remote areas a lot. But of course, you know, even as we've seen in the last couple of weeks here in Victoria with our storms and going back over the years with bushfires and so on, you know, these kinds of environmental impacts really do affect our infrastructure and can make it very difficult for people to actually be able to connect digitally. And then as well as this digital divide between Australians, so between those living in metropolitan areas versus regional and remote areas, we also have Australia's digital divide compared to the rest of the world. So our national broadband network is much slower than a lot of comparable countries, and it is one of the slowest networks in the OECD. Although, you know, it hasn't, the NBN rollout hasn't actually been completed yet, we do still have a lot of effects of regional and remote communities. Phone coverage can also be very problematic. So I know I was talking to someone up in the NT recently, and they were talking about a school that they visit quite regularly, and they were estimating that one week a month, that school doesn't have any phone or internet coverage. So the whole town doesn't, and it really impacts on that school sector as well. And I know we've seen a lot in the media recently around the issue around phone coverage as well. And of course, we've got issues with our 5G rollout and the benefits that they may bring against security issues as well. So I can see that people are saying that the cost of digital devices really is one of the big issues, and followed by the cost of digital access. And I really would agree to both of those. Although you can find low cost alternatives, often, particularly in the area of devices, capacity and of those devices changes so rapidly, and the cost of replacement is quite high, particularly for low income earners or those who are unemployed. And so I really do agree that cost is one of those major barriers. Okay, now one of the other issues that we found, particularly through the GAN Australia survey that was conducted late last year and earlier this year, was access to digital training. Now, one of the things that was really shown in that survey was that most people go online to do training. Now, that's fine. There's absolutely no issue with going online, and we know that there's a huge amount of free and low cost and really high quality online training, including by organisations like Microsoft, LinkedIn Learning, and so on. And that's fantastic. But of course, if you don't have the devices to be able to go online, or if you don't have those basic digital skills to be able to go online in the first place, you're not going to be able to take advantage of any of that learning. So for someone who needs to develop their digital skills to be able to access online learning, there really can be quite few, very few options in developing those skills. Now, again, local councils, particularly through their libraries and those kinds of environments, will often offer in-person digital training, but it can be quite difficult for people to access as well. And often, you know, those programs are targeted at specific groups. So, for example, migrants or older Australians, and aren't necessarily targeting younger people who may be in the workforce or trying to enter the workforce. Okay, so thank you for that poll. I think that's really interesting. You know, I mean, all of these things are an issue, so I'm absolutely not disagreeing with anyone, but really interested to see the cost of digital devices being up there. And, you know, I find every time I have to buy a new phone or computer that the cost of digital devices, you know, even makes my heart beat a little bit faster. So, you know, it's a huge issue for people who don't have that same kind of access. Okay, digital skills development. So this is another huge issue that Australia is facing, is our development of digital skills really across industry and across landscapes. And I should note, I should have noted this earlier actually, that I do have reference to the blog post at the end of some of these slides. So for those of you who haven't been following along or have been following along our blog series, you will see reference there to which blog post I am talking about at each particular time. So as I said earlier, COVID-19 really has been a huge accelerator of digital transformation, which has been fantastic in a lot of ways. I'm quite happy sitting here at my house this morning, not having to go outside into this miserable cold weather and working from home. But of course, not everyone is in that same kind of environment where they can simply move to remote learning or where they have those digital skills to actually be able to take advantage of that kind of environment. And we do know that a lot of our training providers as well have been moving to remote learning where possible. Now, in many cases, this isn't an issue. Students will have high quality digital skills that will enable them to take advantage of that. But there are situations, instances where students don't have that, and where online learning isn't necessarily the best outcome for the student cohort as well. Now, digital skills development, as well as often moving online, has a number of other issues. So I'm not going to go through the well-worn story of problems in vet qualification development and those kinds of areas, but we do know a lot of the time that our vet quals aren't meeting the needs of employers and industry, and that certainly is the case in digital skills, probably more so than in other areas because it's such a rapidly changing environment. So taking a look at some data up to the end of 2019, so this is from NCVR, from Total Vet Students and Courses and the National Apprentice and Trainee Collection. And, you know, at the end of next week, we will have an update to this data. So very much looking forward to getting 2020 annual data and seeing what happens. But what we can really see here is that commencements, Australian apprenticeship commencements in the ICT training package, and training enrolment, so students in the ICT training package, have really declined over a number of years. When we break this down, and it's not shown on this particular graph, but when you do break it down, that's really driven by the decline in NBN specific qualification usage. So of course, as the NBN rollout has slowed and ended, people aren't taking up those qualifications, or employers aren't taking on apprentices into those quals. So we are seeing quite a drop off in that. What we can also see here is the increase in enrolments in the Certificate 4 in cybersecurity. Now, this is a really interesting case study for me because as I'm sure many of you already know, that Certificate 4 is outside of the training package, and it was originally developed because there was a gap that needed to be filled. So, you know, it's not always taken lightly to develop a qualification outside of the training package, but there was a really good case that was made that a qualification was needed, and developing that outside of the training package did mean that it was developed very quickly and taken to market in a much more rapid time frame than what would happen through a training package. So you can see we have really a high an increase in commencements in that Certificate 4. Now, what we don't know at this point in time, and it's very difficult through the data to be able to drill down to this particular qualification, particularly because it's a non-training package qual, is that we don't actually know what completion rates or outcomes are like. So are these students who are enrolling in this particular qualification actually completing it, and are they getting employed at the end? Now, we do know that there are very few enrolments, commencements as an Australian apprenticeship into this qualification, although it is approved in the majority, at least, of states and territories as a traineeship. So I do really wonder what the disconnect is there between employers wanting to take someone on in this qualification as an apprenticeship versus potentially then employing them post completion of the qualification. And again, without really being able to drill down into the data, that's a very difficult question. Certainly, I've talked to some people who have reported the same kinds of issues that we do have across a number of technical skills areas around the capacity to find high quality trainers and around delivery to students in a format that really suits their needs as well. So again, same kinds of issues that we have seen really across the vet sector, and that are well known through a number of reports, state and federal reports across the country in recent years. So on the back of all of this, what we're seeing is an increased need for skills development really across all industries, as we talked about at the start, but also within the context of traditional roles. So there are really 3 types of digital skills training that's needed in Australia, and this is really the broadest of all 3. So those generic digital skills that are really needed across kind of any job that you can imagine. So being able to access emails, word processing, in some occasions spreadsheets, but also things like being able to submit online timesheets, log into HR portals and so on. So skills that really, you know, most people will need. And even thinking back to Peter Tressiter's presentation earlier, logging into something like MyGov to make sure that you've got your tax lodged and all those kinds of things. You know, you really do need digital skills to be able to do that. So those broad generic digital skills across the context of all occupations are really important. But we also have a couple of higher level skills as well. So we've got those higher level skills needed in some occupations and industries. So these technical specific skills. So the usage of specific software packages, of specific hardware that are really need to be contextualized to that particular occupation. So these are higher level, but really they are quite specific to a particular role. So thinking about even in your organizations, there will be types of software that you use that really won't be generic for use really across all businesses. And they're the really kinds of higher level specific skills that many people need. Oh. Okay, I'm not sure if I'm still presenting. Something's just gone a little bit funny with my presentation here. So I do apologise to anyone. That's just kind of flicked a little bit differently.
Peter, it's still there. I think my computer was doing a upgrade as this presentation's been going on. So apologies for that.
No, not a problem. I was just hoping that I hadn't dropped out of the session. But since I'm still here, I'll keep going. Thanks, Gary. And then the last type of digital skills that are needed through the vet sector are really those emerging tech jobs that need specific digital skills. So there are a number of tech jobs that we already know about in IT, but these really are rapidly changing through developments in the tech space, and there are a number of emerging skills in this area. So the National Skills Commission has done a range of research around emerging jobs, and a lot of these do require these high-level tech skills. So they're including things like data analytics, digital marketing and regulation as some of the really big emerging industries. But of course, then we do also have those really high-level IT roles as well around web development and so on. So a lot of emerging and I guess developing tech jobs that need those high-level specific skills. Okay. So another poll for everyone to jump into. So this one is around which are the greatest obstacles to aligning digital skills training with industry requirements. So again, we do know that we have a range of issues across, and this is not necessarily unique to the vet sector. I will say it's across education, so schooling and post-school education and training. But which of these would you see? So please jump into the poll and tell me which are the greatest obstacles to aligning digital skills training with industry requirements. Is it the basic nature of digital skills development that's often needed? Time taken for new training to be developed. I can see someone has jumped on that one very quickly. The elective nature of digital training in a lot of vet qualifications. So often you won't see core units related to digital skills training, although of course a lot of the time you will be using digital technologies in that training. Or is it around the broad nature of digital training in the training packages? So again, where you do have that training embedded, often it is that more generic skills rather than those technical skills that you may need in specific occupations. So I'll just give you a moment to anyone else to jump in there, and I can see that we've all got issues with the time taken for new training to be developed. Okay, I think, excellent. Having a little bit of a change, but those two definitely are our most popular at the moment. So, you know, as we know, it does take up to 2 years for our training package qualifications to be updated or developed. And given how rapidly technology changes, by the time something comes out to market, often it's already outdated. So certainly I think that is an issue, and certainly that example of the Certificate 4 in cyber is a really great example of kind of working still within the formal qualification system, but outside of the training packages as well. Okay, if you've got any more thoughts about that, you're welcome to keep using these polls, and we do have polls as well embedded into some of our blog posts as well if you want to jump in those, and they are the same as these ones, but if you've got anyone else around the office that wants to give some feedback, you can jump on those as well. Okay, so digital skills policy and initiatives. Now, we've already talked a little bit around some reviews of the sector. The Joyce Review was one of the really big federal ones recently. I'm sure everyone's familiar with that particular review. And of course, a lot of the recommendations in that review were quite general, but really do also apply to this digital landscape as well. So from that review, we've had a number of initiatives that have been announced, and even recently in the Australian federal budget, we're having new announcements. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the different state and territory initiatives at the moment. There will be one I'll talk about in a moment, but I just want to touch on a few of these. So really recognising the fact that it's not just us sitting here complaining about some of these issues. The government and industry as well really are quite active in this space to overcome some of these. So the Digital Skills Organisation pilot, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, is working in this space to try and kind of work around those issues that we've already identified around the length of time it takes to develop new qualifications, and really making sure that these digital skills quals are meeting industry needs. So that's a really exciting pilot that has been going on, and I can include a link to that in the PowerPoint if anyone's looking for it. But you know, as we know from the most recent federal budget, those skills organisation pilots have been successful and are being moved into our new enterprise organisations, which will be taking the vet sector forward in the future using this kind of similar kind of framework as well. So we should hopefully be seeing some more rapid qualification development and overcoming some of these issues that we have seen in the past. We've got the Digital Transformation Expert Panel, which is really trying to understand industry needs across digital transformation and to meet those. And again, there's some really excellent information on their website around members of that expert panel and around the work that the Digital Transformation Expert Panel is doing. We have a range of federal budget measures, which we do include a range of information about in our most recent blog post, so blog post 4, policy approaches. But one that I want to touch on, which has been an ongoing project for a number of years, but really has only been spoken about publicly over the past year to 18 months, is the JEDI project, which is now run out of the National Skills Commission. So I really think that the government has hit on the best acronym ever for this particular one. But JEDI is the Jobs and Education Data Infrastructure database, and it's really linking up a range of data at an individual level about what job someone is in with the education that they've done in the past, and things like wage data from the ATO and those kinds of elements. So the National Skills Commission website has a range of really technical information about JEDI, but what's really important here is that basically, the data experts in the government have put this huge database together. It's ever evolving, and it's really being used to determine what skills are needed across the Australian economy. And their recent skills classification is an example of that. Now, I know, Gary, that you had someone from the National Skills Commission on yesterday. Unfortunately, I missed their session, but I'm really looking forward to the recording of that one. So I'm not going to go on too much about the work they're doing. I would highly recommend, if you're not up to date with the NSC work, it is a really important area of government work at the moment, and there's certainly going to be feeding a lot of data and information through to policy development. So please keep a close eye on that one. But again, because they are looking at really up to date and a very big data set using machine learning to analyse that data, it does mean that they're able to really understand what skills are needed across industries and feed all of that intelligence back into really the policy environment. And then, as I said, the states and territories also have a number of programs and budget announcements. So I'm not going to go into all of those. We do touch on a couple in our blog posts as well, if you are interested in those. But of course, digital skills, it is an issue that everyone's aware of. We do have digital skills training that is popping up a lot more in a range of different environments. So the states and territories are very active in these areas. And what we also have are industry working to solve a lot of these problems. So again, many of you are probably quite familiar with these different programs or some of these different programs, but we are seeing industry really going out and trying to make an impact in the areas that they really need. So MEGT and Microsoft are running the traineeship program, which has been ongoing for a while now, and we've seen some really good success stories coming out of that. We also have ADECO Microsoft working on their global skills initiatives. RMIT, their associate degree in digital technologies for advanced manufacturing, is a really exciting upcoming project. And we've got the AI group digital classroom short courses. So just a few different initiatives that our Australian digital skills industry have running to try and fix some of the issues in their digital skills areas. Oh, okay, and we have one poll now before we move into the space of Australian apprenticeships. So I am probably going to run a minute or two over time, for which I apologise, Gary. But you will have a recording of this. So if anyone does need to jump out, you will receive a recording. And the next section that I'm talking about will be in our blog post that you'll be able to access later today, that will be released publicly on Thursday as well. So jumping into the poll, what reform imperatives do you think the federal government should be prioritising on the back of the Joyce review? Is it around, there you go, excellent, reliable information about careers and school pathways, quality assurance, the speed of qualification development, simplified funding and skills matching, or greater access to participation by disadvantaged Australians? So we've got a range of different options here. Now, these many of these are being worked on at the moment, so it'll be very interesting to see what is occurring across the space. You know, I might be slightly biased, but I do think that careers information and pathways are a really important area for of need, and certainly something that the National Careers Institute and National Skills Commission are working together on as well. Again, speed of qualification development, I know that one's a double up from earlier, but it is something that you know, is a big issue and needs to be sorted. And my personal other favourite on this list is that access to participation by disadvantaged Australians. So again, going back to the digital divide and social inclusion, I think it is really important to enable all Australians to take access of digital skills training and digital environments as well. Okay, so I'm just going to jump over to our last topic for today, which is around digital skills in Australian apprenticeships. So to access the blog post, you will be able to go to aapathways.com.au. Now let me find where I wrote the URL down, and it will be /digital-skills-blog post. And I can send that one to Gary after the session, and we can send that around 21, or I can also pop it in the chat as well when I end the session today. So if anyone is looking for that, it will be going up later today, but you can also access that publicly on Thursday via the ATIS blog as well. So what role do I see Australian apprenticeships playing in digital skills? Now, of course, there is the fact that Australian apprenticeships really are one of the best methods for a huge, diverse range of Australians to undertake education and training, and of course to get that first employment opportunity as well. So particularly we know that the GTOs, and I'm quite happy to spruik the work that you will do, play a huge role in social inclusion generally and working with disadvantaged groups of Australians. And I really see that Australian apprenticeships are one of the best and supported pathways for people to get into education and employment. And really that includes their digital skills capacity as well. So being able to support access to digital devices through you know, student loans potentially, but also the fact that someone is moving into a paid employment pathway and potentially being able to get additional Centrelink payments there as well, acknowledging, of course, the lower wages for apprentices and trainees, but, you know, they will be moving into, or the vast majority of apprentices and trainees do move into high level paid employment post-completion. And of course, they will be gaining access to digital devices and developing their digital skills, both through their formal qualification and through their employment element of their Australian apprenticeship. So access, I think, in this social inclusion space is something that Australian apprenticeships do very well and is really important in the digital skills space. Now, of course, we do need to acknowledge that many of our apprentices and trainees may not have fantastic digital skills when they come in, despite the stereotype that young people, so our Gen Zs coming into the workplace, are digital natives. often they actually won't have access to these devices, and they may actually not have the digital skills for the workplace, even though they may be excellent on TikTok, they may not know how to answer their emails. I shouldn't stereotype like that, but of course, you know, it is an issue for a subset of the population. So the other areas I can see Australian apprenticeships really working, and again, particularly our GTOs and ASINs, is around business development opportunities in those emerging industries. So as we are developing new vocational qualifications in this formal training system, and they are being picked up by states and territories as Australian apprenticeships, it is a really great way to be able to go out to businesses who are working in those industries and explain the benefits of an Australian apprenticeship pathway or a VET pathway to their employers, particularly when employers need their staff to have that experience on the job and want training in their particular systems and processes as well. So again, we all know the benefits of an Australian apprenticeship for employers, but particularly in these emerging industries where we are seeing new qualifications being developed, and we've seen a range of new ICT quals in the past few months, but it is a great opportunity for business development and bringing new industries and occupations into the apprenticeship sector. Of course, then there's the higher level digital skills apprenticeships, so those really ICT core tech. So not just ICT training package, but we'll also see digital marketing, for example, through the BSB training package, some of our higher level manufacturing and so on. So there's really tech specific occupations and skills where we can do Australian apprenticeships, and often they will be classified as apprenticeships as well, particularly through some of those more, I guess, Industry 4.0 related qualifications. And we have, so this is combining these last 2 points. So we've got those technical specific digital skills apprenticeships. We also have cadetships coming through, so slightly outside of the Australian apprenticeship space, but a very similar model at the university level. And of course, really being able to provide that training across the board. So there's 3 types of trainings I talked about earlier: our generic, our more occupation specific, and then our high level technical skills, all fall within the Australian apprenticeship sector. And of course, knowing that there is a lot of industry training going on, of course, an apprentice can include that in their learning as well. So they're not confined to only doing their formal qualification. They can add on other elements of non-formal or non-accredited training to that. And then we also have the role that our organisations across the sector play in providing input into digital skills. So working with IRCs, going out to training package consultations, working with government, our particularly GTOs and ASINs have huge linkages across industry, but also across the education sector, and have a holistic understanding of what is going on at both ends of the spectrum. And I think being able to give input into what is going on and what needs to happen is something really valuable that a lot of our organisations can do. So I'd really urge all of you to really consider how you can give that input and feed the intelligence that you gain in your day-to-day work back through into the system as well. We can support government and industry policies and initiatives. So as I mentioned before, we've got some of those industry initiatives which are partnering with organisations across the VET sector and the Australian apprenticeship sector. So exploring those different opportunities and considering how we can use those. So use Australian apprenticeships to overcome some of those particular issues, I think is a really powerful position that we can come from. And my last point is around the potential use of that traditional model. So, you know, apprenticeships, I guess in a general term, not referring to a specific Australian apprenticeship contract, you know, apprenticeships and the apprenticeship model goes back hundreds of years. It is a very traditional model of employment, but we are seeing more and more that employers are looking for that on-the-job training coupled with higher level technical training as well. So I think that there are ways that we can use the Australian apprenticeships model in an innovative fashion to really meet the needs of these future digital technology skills. Okay. Poll today. That one will be in the blog post for all of you to be able to respond to later. So you can download our digital skills report from the GAN Australia website, so gan-australia.org/digital-skilling-in-Australia. Wow, that's a long one, Gary. We need to work on that. You can read the blogs on the AA Pathways website, or you can contact the team. So Gary, Nick and myself, happy for you to contact any of us if you are looking for further information about this particular report. Okay, and we do have an upcoming webinar next week. So Gary will be joining Mark and myself along with Beth Worrell from Microsoft Philanthropies, and we will be talking about the future of digital skills and how they relate to Australian apprenticeships. So really going a bit more into some case studies and some discussion and future forward thinking around how Australian apprenticeships fit into this system. So if you do have time to join us next Tuesday afternoon, you can register on the AA Pathways website as well, /events for that one. Okay, and Gary, do we have any questions that have come through?
Okay, I didn't see anything pop up in the chat, but I have enabled everyone's microphones to be turned on. Again, I think you've picked up on some of the points that I wanted to cover, Peter, which was, next Tuesday, the 29th of June, between 2 and 3 p.m, we're running a specific webinar on this topic. I'm really keen for members to have a bit of a think about, from their specific circumstances, are they getting host employers? Is there any feedback around digital skills or digital literacy? What are you seeing that young people need in particular industries, whether it's carpentry, apprenticeship, hospitality? Are you starting to see the impacts of the digital skills or the lack of digital skills in the traditional sort of trade areas? Really keen to sort of explore what that may look like, and then going on from that, what would you like to see included in training packages or added on to training packages that will help sort of overcome some of these issues? All right, I haven't seen anyone put their mics on. I am having trouble with my camera, so it's ironic that that happens through a digital skills session, but my computer was going through an upgrade as that was happening, so I couldn't stop it in time. Apologies for that.
Understand there are always digital skills issues, aren't there, or digital technology issues?
Yeah.
Excellent. So I'm just jumping into Slido as well, just to see if we've had any other questions come through there. But unfortunately, I too am having some digital issues where it looks like Slido has crashed for me, which is why I didn't go to that last poll as well. So apologies for that one. But if any questions have come through, I am happy. Okay, I think I've got it working again, and it doesn't look like we've had anything come through, but if anything does come up, I can answer directly to people in there as well. So any questions, feel free to get in touch with Gary or myself, and we're happy to ask those as well.
Thanks, Peter. As we said, there's a fair bit of government interest in the digital skills and how it applies to a whole range of different occupations. So really keen for members to get involved over the next few months about what does this look like from their perspective. We're really keen to get some feedback and look at what are the focus areas from our perspective that we want to, I guess, evolve a little bit further in our research and our programs. Thank you for your time today, Peter. We really appreciate your support.